I think you'll get a lot of good out of this as far as your efforts for non-GMO month preparation, how to address consumer concerns, and kind of the lay of the land in non-GMO in general right now. Here with us all today is Megan Westgate, the Executive Director of the project. She'll be leading this webinar. And I am Chris Keefe, the Project Outreach Coordinator, and probably the person with whom you'll be talking by email. If you have any questions, do feel free to follow up either at the end of this webinar or by email to retailers@nongmoproject.org. Megan, take it away.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. So first of all, I just want to let you know that we have a lot of information to cover quickly, as is often the case with this subject. And so I want to reassure you that we will be making this is being recorded, first of all, so you can access the recording of the webinar and you can share it with others on your team. And we also will be sending out a PDF package of these slides following the webinar. So if there's anything that you want to go back and look at more in depth, you can do that. A couple of housekeeping things. You are all on mute by default to limit disruption, but you can you should see a little hand icon on your GoToWebinar interface. You can click that to indicate that you'd like to be unmuted, and then you can also, so if you have a question, that would be something to do, and then you can also type questions into the little question box there, and I would recommend doing that as we go because we're covering a number of different things today, and you may forget an important question by the end if you don't do that. I'm not planning to take questions as we go. We'll save them all for the end, but please feel free to type them in as they come up. So first of all, I'd just like to say that we're so pleased that we have about 1,200 stores registered for non-GMO month so far, and more registrations coming in. And we're thrilled to have about 100 of you participating in this webinar today. So we're seeing really great participation, and we thank you all for that. What we will be going over this morning is GMO 101, just some really basic facts about what GMOs are and what they're engineered to do. Quick overview of the non-GMO project. I'm assuming both of those things will be review for most of you, so I'm going to go through it pretty quickly. Update on the Right to Know movement. There's a lot happening with mandatory labeling efforts, and we want to make sure that you're in the loop on the basics of that if you're not already. We'll be covering a few highlights from our non-GMO communications toolkit, hopefully things that will help you communicate with your customers during non-GMO month. And then finally, we'll be looking at some specific things from the non-GMO month toolkit with a focus on the little cheat sheet we've created, which is 5 things to do for non-GMO month if you don't do anything else. And the focus there is really looking at practical things that you still have time to do in the next couple of weeks to make sure that your non-GMO month is a huge success. Sorry, we seem to be having a technical difficulty. The slide is not transitioning. Sorry, folks, hold on one moment. Okay, there we go. So terminology, definitions, what is a GMO? Again, I'm sure this is review, but this will be in the PDF that goes out, so if you need to reference a succinct definition, this is a good one. Genetically modified organisms are plants or animals created through the process of, sorry. I don't know what's going on with the technology. Do you know what you can see on your screen, Chris? Okay. Hang in there just a minute. We'll figure out what sort of attitude problem our technology is having. Can you log in? Okay. Sorry, Chris is logging in case we need to switch computers. I'm not sure what's going on. Okay, let's try this again. So, what is a GMO? Genetically modified organisms are plants or animals created through the process of genetic engineering. This experimental technology forces DNA from one species into a different species. The resulting GMOs are unstable combinations of plant, animal, bacterial, and viral genes that cannot occur in nature or in traditional breeding. And one of the reasons we pretty much always include this slide in presentations is that there is a lot of consumer confusion, people thinking that anything that's hybridized or anything that's not like a organic heirloom is genetically engineered. And so we like to make sure that everyone has a really clear definition and that we're all on the same page. So the traits that are common in GMOs, I'm going to go through this really quickly, but the main thing that I want to make sure that everyone understands is that in spite of all of the biotech industry propaganda, GMOs are not being engineered to offer any benefit to humans or to the environment. They're not doing anything to solve the climate crisis or global hunger or any of that. Almost all of the GMOs on the market are engineered for herbicide tolerance. They're meant to be sprayed with the same herbicides that are sold by the companies who sell GMOs. So again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but that slide is there for reference, and there's more information about this on our website also and in our pocket guide as well. And the crops that are not engineered for herbicide tolerance, most of those have BT, which is an insecticide, engineered into their DNA. So quick overview of the Right to Know movement, which has gained a lot of momentum just in the past year, just so that we kind of understand what the different players are. There's the Just Label It campaign, which has been doing a great job of raising awareness. Their strategy is on federal labeling, and really the fundamental part of their strategy is to let Washington, D.C. know that Americans do care about this issue and that we would like information about whether or not our food has GMO in it. They've got over, I think it's at 1.2 million people have signed their petition to the FDA so far, and they're continuing to solicit signatures for that. Another really important thing happening right now is the California Right to Know 2012 ballot initiative, also known as Prop 37. There are, I believe, about 17 states at this point that have pursued some kind of mandatory labeling at the state level. California is the only one right now that's actually bringing it to the voters to decide. It's going to be on the ballot this November, and so they're looking for a lot of support. Certainly, if you're in California, we encourage you to reach out to them and figure out how you can raise awareness and get out the vote on that if you're not already involved. There's also a ballot initiative being developed in Washington, and so that's something to keep an eye on if you're in Washington. So those are efforts to get mandatory labeling, so labels that are required by law to be on food saying this contains GMOs. Then we have voluntary labeling, which is what the Non-GMO Project does. And the benefit of the Non-GMO Project strategy is that it does not rely on the government whatsoever. It's something that we can and are doing ourselves, which is we have the only third-party standard for non-GMO best practices in North America, and we have a third-party verification program, and our label goes on products that are produced without GMOs. We required ongoing testing of all GMO risk ingredients, things derived from corn, soy, canola, and other GMO risk crops. And then I'm sure by now many of you have seen our label. It's a relatively young effort. We only incorporated about 5 years ago, but we're seeing a ton of traction. And so Our mission is to protect a non-GMO food supply and give people informed choice. And within that mission, we support all different kinds of efforts for achieving that. But our primary focus is on this market-based strategy, so third-party verification and third-party labeling. And it was actually developed by retailers because of questions from consumers, and it's a really pragmatic approach to protecting our non-GMO food supply and giving consumers the information that they're looking for right now without waiting for the government. But again, we do work closely with those other mandatory labeling efforts as well. So the good news is that this market-based strategy is definitely working. This is a recent slide from SPINS showing where we're at year-to-date on sales of non-GMO project verified products. We send SPINS a spreadsheet every month with all of the UPCs for all of our verified products, and they give us great data in return. So we're at $1.8 billion in annual sales, and that does not include Whole Foods and Walmart. So we are actually at closer to $3 billion now, and we've got over 5,000 verified products. So one thing to note is that just because a product is verified doesn't mean it has our label yet, because sometimes it can take 6 months or more for a company to redesign packaging, but we've definitely seen that the label is showing up on lots of products now, and hopefully that's what you're seeing too. And that makes it easy for consumers to avoid GMOs and exercise their right to informed choice. So just a few things from our non-GMO communications toolkit. We're going to go through the top 3 talking points that are things that you might find useful in communicating with your shoppers during non-GMO months. We'll talk a little bit about terminology, and then I just want to make sure you know that we actually have a complete non-GMO communications toolkit, and it's available for free download on our website. And if you haven't downloaded that and read through it, we encourage you to do so. Like all of our toolkits, it's designed to be very readable. There's really great content, but it's only 5 pages long, so it's very readable, and hopefully you find it useful. So the number 1 talking point on this issue is that we have a right to know what's in the food we're eating and feeding to our families. We deserve an informed choice. The reason that it's important to go through these talking points is that there are so many things wrong with GMOs, so many reasons to have objections and be concerned. And as a movement, we've historically not been very coordinated about our talking points, which means that the message can kind of get lost in the noise of everyone picking what resonates with them the most and choosing their favorite talking point, and then there's 1,000 different talking points. So at the Non-GMO Project, we're really spearheading a Managing the Non-GMO Message initiative to get people on the same page with these talking points. And these talking points, along with the rest of the communications toolkit, are based on surveys, focus groups, polling, media analyses, all of the data that we could gather up, a lot of it being generated by Just Label It, which has been really useful. So it's research-based information. These are the talking points that work, and we encourage you to use them. The reason the right to know is the most effective talking point and should be repeated the most often is that it's pretty much impossible to argue with. If anyone does argue that people don't have the right to know what they're eating, they are not going to look good. The next talking point is that this is an experimental technology. GMO foods have not been adequately tested, and there's an ethical concern with eating them and especially with feeding them to our families. And we know that moms and dads are a really great target audience for communicating the non-GMO message, and that's something that we're focusing on more at the Non-GMO Project, and we hope to be giving you great tools for doing that too throughout this coming year. The third talking point is the global picture, and this one really drives it home for people, especially if they're not that familiar with the issue, that nearly 50 countries require labels on GMOs, and a lot of those countries have also severe restrictions or even bans against their production and sale. So basically the way those 3 talking points work together is we have a right to know what's in our food, this technology is experimental, and because it's experimental, it's either labeled or banned in most other developed countries around the world. So just one other quick point on communications, just a terminology thing, because this is another area where there can be disconnect and differences of opinion and usage. So there's different acronyms. Some people use GE, some people use GMO, and I wanted to show you all this just so you can see that this is a media analysis from online media, and you can see that GMO is far and away the most common term, and we really encourage people to use GMO as opposed to GE, partly because GE can look like General Electric. It's a very famous acronym already, and so it can cause confusion, whereas GMO is a unique acronym, and you can just see that that's what's being used in the space. A little side note, and there's more about this in the communications toolkit, is that even though GMO is the preferred acronym, it is still good to talk about genetic engineering, because research has showed that if you're talking about the full term spelled out, genetic modification does not have as strong of an impression on people as genetic engineering. Genetic engineering more adequately conveys the sinister, extreme nature of the technology. So it's good to use both, but if you're going to use an acronym, make sure that you're using GMO. So into non-GMO month specifics, this is just a little overview of what we saw last year. We had over 1,000 stores participating, and of course the big focus is on educating and empowering your communities to make non-GMO choices. One of the things that we wanted to let you know that happens through non-GMO month, that's an awesome boon to the whole effort, is that we see a huge spike in enrollment and verification of products leading up to non-GMO month, because food companies see that this is a great opportunity to be in the spotlight, because all of you are making such a great effort to call out the non-GMO project verified choices in your store. Food companies really see the value in being part of that, and we saw an even bigger jump this year than last year in the number of new inquiries over the summer as people try to get in the queue and get ready to be verified in time to be part of this celebration. So that's a really important benefit and strategy of non-GMO month. It's also just a win-win situation, because we saw last year that there was an average increase of 7.7% in sales of verified products at stores that were registered for non-GMO month. And so that means that to the extent that you can call out your verified products, you are not only going to motivate food companies to make a non-GMO commitment to start testing their ingredients to get verified through the non-GMO project, but you're also going to boost sales in your store. You can see here, this is more SPINS data that they pulled together for us, and there was as much as a 10.3% average increase during one of the weeks of non-GMO month last year. So this really speaks to the value of doing things that call out verified products at retail. And so that's what we're going to jump into now, is looking at what are some of the specific things that you can do as part of non-GMO month in your store. So all of you are registered for non-GMO month, and so you should have access to the password protected online toolkit, and hopefully you've been looking at that. You've been getting your weekly emails from Chris and checking out the current action items and drawing on the resources that are there. The toolkit is organized by department and type of tool. So there's a section for education and outreach, a section for merchandising and sales, and a section on training and policy. And we've also developed a PDF guide to the toolkit. And part of why we did that is because we know this is a lot of content. We're really excited to be able to give you so many different tools, because we know that different things will be useful to different stores and you all will get excited about different things. But because there's so much, we understand that it can also be overwhelming. And so we created a nice, simple 5-page PDF guide to the toolkit, which just covers some of the highlights. And we're going to be going through some of that today. And so if you haven't downloaded that PDF toolkit, we encourage you. Actually, we can probably include it in our follow-up email to the webinar today, so we'll get you all another copy of that. So we're going to be looking at the non-GMO month cheat sheet. That's the last page in the toolkit. And basically, it's if you're only going to do 5 things for non-GMO month, here's what we recommend that they be. And these are all things that you still have time to do at this point. So number 1 is end caps. Our goal for participating retailers is that anybody who walks into your store during the month of October immediately knows that it is non-GMO month. And the single best way for them to see that is to have you set up your end caps in a high visibility way. End caps are going to be the focus of today's e-newsletter, which you'll be getting from Chris this afternoon. So we'll be sending out, we have planograms from UNFI and Tree of Life featuring all of the many verified products that they have on sale for you this October, and they've designed end caps that feature those products with different themes. We also have developed a crafty little suggestion for how you can decorate your end caps that involves making some really cute dangling butterflies, and that was inspiration that we got from the community food co-op here in Bellingham. They did that on one of their end caps last year, and we loved it and took that idea and put it into a little kit for you so that you can, if there's templates and instructions for how to do that yourself. We also encourage you to get really creative and come up with your own new ideas for how to set up end caps. There is an end cap contest, and the winning store will get a full case of our beautiful non-GMO Project tote bags for you to give away to your staff and your customers. To participate in the end cap contest, all you have to do is take a photo of your end cap and email it to us by October 31st, and there's information about that in the online toolkit and in the PDF toolkit. So the next thing is shelf tagging. This is obviously more time consuming but also super valuable. If you think back to those spin slides showing that boost in sales of verified products, again, that was only at stores that were registered for non-GMO month, and presumably one of the big distinctions is that at stores registered for non-GMO month, there's a very high likelihood that there were shelf tags up, making it really easy for people to see which products are verified and also to raise more awareness about the issue. There are full instructions and information about how to do your shelf tagging in the online toolkit. We have artwork templates for you to use, and we also will be providing, I think in about a week, we'll have the final spreadsheet of UPCs that are eligible for tagging during non-GMO month. So that's the number 2 thing. If you only do 2 things, end caps and shelf tagging, and again, those 2 things will make it super obvious to anyone coming into your store that it is non-GMO month and that you are celebrating and that you really support their right to informed choice and their right to choose non-GMO. The next thing is giving out handouts, and a lot of you probably have already ordered the pocket guides. If you have ordered those, they are in the process of being packed together. It's very exciting in the Non-GMO Project offices. This week, all of our pack and ship is underway, and a lot of things are already packed up, and things will be going out by Friday. So if you've ordered materials, they will be on their way soon. If you haven't ordered pocket guides, this same information is available in a trifold brochure that you can, again, download from the online toolkit, and you can either send to a local printer or print out in-house. You can also have your own pocket guides printed locally. They just are a little bit fancier because they're a custom size and require more folding. So it's up to you, but we know a lot of you have ordered these materials, and either incorporating them into your end cap or making them available at your customer service counter or at the registers is a really great way to provide your shoppers with information about the issue. It just covers all of the basics and gives our website for more information. And I will let you know also, and you'll get more about this in next week's email, but a lot of the facts that are in these handouts, we're also making special shelf talkers. There are going to be about 20 to 30 shelf talkers that you can choose from that you can post at different points in your store. So while I'm kind of sneaking it in here, it's not technically a handout, but I just wanted to let you know about that. That's another great way, another tool that you can use to let your shoppers know more about this issue and help understand what it's all about if they're less familiar, or give them some new insight even if they know about it. So the number 4 thing is staff training, and we thank you all so much for participating in this webinar, because that is certainly a great step towards staff training. And again, because this webinar is being recorded, we hope that you'll share it with others on your team. We also have, next week we'll have posted a little quick facts sheet in the Non-GMO Month Toolkit that you can print out and give to your cashiers or customer service staff, basically, or put in the apron pocket of staff that are on the floor stocking. It's just like quick of your staff trained. They'll have tools and materials to help them. Chris has also been developing a series of logbook notes, and hopefully you've been using those. If you haven't, we recommend checking out that section of the toolkit and printing some of those out. The idea being, obviously, that if you have a logbook, which we know most of you do, you can keep your whole staff informed about the issue and the event, and make sure that they just are in the loop with all of that. So that's a really great resource for that. And the final piece, the final cheat sheet element, when my computer feels like getting there, is, doesn't it just make it so exciting? We're building the suspense. What is number 5? Oh, press release and article. So at this point, it is definitely getting on the late side if you have a newsletter, to get an article into it, but you can always put it in your e-news if you're past your print deadline for October. You can put it in the e-news, and we strongly encourage you to do a press release. We have an awesome template that we've developed that you can customize or not. It's actually super easy. If you want to put in some special comments about things that are happening at your store, you can. If you want to just insert your name in the few places that we've highlighted for you to do that. Hi, we're back. Sorry about that. So what I was saying about the press release is that this issue is getting a lot of attention now, even in mainstream media, and that's partly because of the Prop 37 in California and the just labeling efforts. There's just a lot more awareness. We're seeing articles in the New York Times and other mainstream media, and so the press release template that we've developed for all of you really draws upon that. And so even if your local media is not familiar with the issue, they'll be able to tell from reading the press release that this is a very timely, very important issue that is well worth covering. And of course, we put it all in the context of you being a leader in your community. So please check out that press release template. We also have some helpful suggestions if you're not familiar with getting press releases into your local media. If that's not something you do a lot, there's good suggestions in there for how to go about doing that. So hopefully you will make the most of that. And with that, that is actually all of the main content that we wanted to go over today, but we really wanted to make sure that we had time to answer your questions. So as promised, we've got about 10 or 15 minutes to answer whatever questions there are. And if you have a question that you haven't typed in yet, please feel free to type that in now. I'm looking at the questions that we've gotten so far. It looks like actually we did get some comments when the audio went out. Just waiting for some other questions to come in. So one question that came in is hybrid the same as GMO? And that's a really great question because a lot of people are confused about that. And the answer is that no, they are not the same thing. And if you look at that first slide we went over, there's good reminder there of just what the distinction with genetic engineering is. But basically, the difference is that genetic engineering involves combining DNA from multiple different species. And so, for example, one of the first GMOs was a tomato where they took the antifreeze gene out of a flounder fish and spliced it into a tomato to make the tomato more frost tolerant. So in hybridization, on the other hand, what would be happening is that different varieties of tomatoes would be being bred together over time to develop desired traits, all traits that are naturally occurring in tomatoes. So that's the key distinction, and that's what makes a lot of the concern about GMOs is because there's inherent instability in crossing that natural species barrier and combining DNA from multiple species, and it's really not well understood what the long-term consequences of that are. What happens when you splice in DNA from a totally foreign species is that genes can get turned on and off, novel proteins and allergens can be created, and there's a lot of questions about the effect it has on the organism itself, and then, of course, on the person who's eating it. Is there a list of companies supporting demos for this month? That's another great question, and you can on our website see a list of all of our verified brands and products, of course, but also on the Non-GMO Month website, on the partners page, you can see there's about 35 companies who have stepped in as sponsors of Non-GMO Month, which helps us not only during Non-GMO Month, but actually supports our activities year-round. And those companies are especially likely to be interested in demos. There's a lot of great familiar brands there. They're committed to making the most of Non-GMO Month and getting all the exposure they can. So I would recommend looking at that list. Again, it's the partners page on the Non-GMO Month site, and we can include a link to that in our follow-up email today. The next question here, are there currently studies being done about the effects of GMO-containing products? If so, who is doing it? There are studies being done, but probably not nearly as many as there should be. And a lot of the studies that are happening are being conducted abroad. One of the problems is that the biotech companies have licensing agreements and patent restrictions on testing their seeds, and it limits research. They also have a lot of influence over our university research system in this country. So some of the most valuable data is coming out of Europe and other countries abroad. We actually just yesterday on our Facebook page posted a new study that just came out of Egypt, confirming what a number of previous studies have shown in terms of the negative health impacts of consuming GMOs. In this study, they used rats as their test subjects, and they saw changes to organs. They saw compromise to the immune system, lower offspring survival rate, some pretty serious consequences. And so there is some data on that and more being generated, but part of why it's so slow to come to light is, again, because of the biotech influence. There is a really, if you're interested in seeing more of the studies, when you download the communications toolkit, there is an addendum to that called GM Crops, Just the Science, and it has about 130 citations of studies that have been done and what they've found, and some of that is focused on health and some of it's focused on yield and other environmental impacts. So, new question. I've been asked if a company can use the non-GMO project label on a product that contains GMO or as a company that uses GMO. I did not think so, but could you perhaps clarify? So this is a really important point. The non-GMO project standard requires that every single ingredient being used in a verified product, if it's derived from GMO risk crop, has to be tested every single time. So there's ongoing testing that's required. We use an action threshold of 0.9%, which basically means that anything that tests over 0.9% cannot go into the finished product. And we set that threshold largely to be compatible with standards in the EU. In any country in Europe, if a food has more than 0.9% GMO, it is required by law to say on the label that it contains GMOs. So we are kind of doing the reverse of that here. And I will say that certainly when we started this endeavor, I for one thought, well, of course we'll set the limit at 0 GMO. There's a couple of reasons why that's not what happened. First of all, there are actual limitations to the testing. So it's not actually scientifically valid to say that something has 0 GMOs, because you would have to test all of something to say that it has 0 GMOs, and then you'd have nothing left to put in the box or the package. So from a scientific perspective, the lowest reasonable threshold you can get to is about 0.1%. We chose to set our threshold higher largely because if we'd set it at 0.1%, we probably would have had maybe 3 companies participating. And our goal is really to protect the food supply overall. And the most important thing to make that strategy successful is to get a critical mass of participation and get as many companies as possible telling their suppliers, we don't want GMO, we're testing for it, and actually testing below 0.9% is still very hard. I can tell you that even with certified organic products, there are regularly rejections with that threshold, and so it's set to be meaningful but also achievable, and there's more information about that in the consumer handout and also on our website. It's definitely a tricky subject because it would be nice to say that something is just GMO free, but unfortunately that's not really practical or achievable. So we use that 0.9% threshold. And I'm not sure if this is part of the question, but it looks like maybe you're also asking if the company uses GMO, if they'd be able to use the verification mark. And so I just want to make sure everyone understands that we verify individual products as opposed to companies. And so you need to make sure that the product itself in question is verified. We are happy to see that a lot of food companies started this process. You know, it's kind of a new thing. It's a huge amount of work and energy and takes a big commitment for them to be able to get verified. A lot of companies chose to start with just a handful of products. We're happy to see that they've seen their sales go up, they've seen the value of it, and a lot of them are enrolling more products now. But a lot of our participants do not have 100% of their products verified. So it is important to check our online shopping guide list and look at individual products. Have you thought about creating an app that would help staff avoid buying GMO products when ordering? That's a great question. We have an app that basically serves the same purpose as our online shopping guide, and we're looking at developing that right now. We're very interested in giving it the functionality where shoppers can scan barcodes and automatically find out whether or not the product is verified, and hopefully we'll be launching that later this year or early next year. In terms of a specific tool for buyers, we know that in the UNFI catalog, at least in the online catalog, all of the non-GMO products are flagged. But if you have specific ideas about what kind of tools or systems would help a buyer avoid these products, that would be great. I mean, the information that we can mainly offer is featuring the products that are verified, and I've actually been meaning to contact UNFI because I know they have a drop-down menu of like maybe 5 or 6 different things in the online catalog where you can choose what trait you're looking for. So you can sort by certified organic, and you can sort by 70 to 95% organic or whatever, and hopefully we can get them to add non-GMO project verified to that sort menu, because I think that would definitely help buyers. Of course, that's just UNFI, but we're working a lot with Tree of Life now too, so we could try to get them to do a similar thing. But if anyone has ideas of what would help buyers to prioritize verified products, please let us know. And of course, for October, it should be really easy because the Tree of Life and UNFI catalogs are both really dedicated to non-GMO month, and there's a lot of items on sale and special sections showing you all of the brands and products. Is there a way to tell what genes have been crossed in foods? So that sounds like a very technical question. So I'm guessing that you're maybe asking which types of foreign genes have been inserted. And there are resources available online, and if you send us a follow-up email, we can show you some of those things. I can let you know that the most common genes that are being inserted are bacteria and virus genes, which is pretty creepy, but also it's in a way unfortunate because it's less graphic. Like, it makes it harder for consumers to wrap their head around what's happening. When you talk about a fish and a tomato being crossed, people really get it, that that's freaky and weird. But if you talk about these obscure bacterial and viral genes that are for the most part what's being used now in commercial production, most people have never heard of them. So it's not as vivid of a picture, and that's why I don't actually know many of them off the top of my head, but I can show you where you can see a listing of all of that if you are interested. So send us an email. It can go to retailers@nongmoproject.org. These are great questions. Thank you, everyone. It looks like we've got a few more. Do you have a recommended response to customers who want to know why we have products on our shelves whose parent companies are investing in the No to Prop 37 efforts? Some of these products may even have your verified non-GMO logo on the packaging, right? Great question. We've been hearing that from a lot of people. It's a really tricky topic. I'm assuming most of you are familiar with that. If not, let us know if you want more info. But basically the deal is that there's some companies, for example, Kellogg's, who owns Kashi, has donated to oppose Prop 37. Dean Foods, who owns Silk, has donated to oppose Prop 37. And I think that it's important for people to understand that these child companies in many ways operate independently of their parent companies. And so, for example, in the case of Kashi and Silk, those companies really are making a huge effort to avoid GMOs in their products. They're actually some of our most active participants and supporters, and their work with us counts for a lot because their scale is so huge. And when a company of that size commits to non-GMO, it has an immediate and huge impact on the supply chain that benefits everyone. It benefits the smaller companies that are participating. It certainly benefits consumers, and it benefits our mission of protecting a non-GMO food supply. So I feel pretty strongly that it is really important to keep supporting all of the brands that are committed to non-GMO project verification, because otherwise it sends a message that it doesn't matter what they do. If their parent company supports GMO, their non-GMO efforts count for nothing, and they might as well not even try. And that is just not a constructive effort. At the same time, we recognize that it matters that their parent companies donate, and we really think that it's good for those companies to hear from you if you're concerned about that, if you're upset about the fact that their parent companies are supporting something that's totally counter to all of our values in the natural products world, they should hear from us. But we are always advocates of constructive solutions. We really believe in supporting the good things that people are doing and having respectful, meaningful dialogue when we don't agree with what they're doing. And so we know that some stores have been pulling products, and we certainly value everyone's right to do what's the right thing in their store and what will work for them and for their customers. But I think in terms of answering customers' questions, you can let them know that in a lot of ways, parent companies and child companies do operate as totally different organizations. They should express their concern to the parent companies, and they should support products that are verified. What is the process for a company to be verified? Is it costly? How does that work? So I just want to check in and acknowledge that we scheduled this webinar to go until 11:45 Pacific, and we're a few minutes past that. We are thrilled to stay on the line and answer questions, but we understand if you need to sign off, that's fine too. We're going to stay here and keep answering all the questions that come in and keep our recording going. So if you need to jump, you can always get back and listen to the end of the recording too. And if you need to sign off, we thank you very much for participating. So back to this question, what is the process for a company to be verified? The answer is kind of long. That's why I wanted to give people the opportunity to sign off. Hold on. What? Chris has an opinion about how to answer this.
Hi, everybody. This is actually a question that we get very often. The process is very in-depth and requires a lot of participants. And because we've gotten this question so many times, we actually tailored our newsletter article, our custom newsletter article this year, to essentially take consumers through the verification process from start to finish. So if you visit the retailer toolkit when we get off of this call and go to the newsletter articles page, you can download a roughly 2-page article that goes through a lot of the details. And any further questions, there's a ton of good information on our website about the process, or you can just get in touch with me at retailers@nongmoproject.org. I'd be more than happy to help answer those questions.
Great. Thank you for remembering that. Yeah, the newsletter article is the most succinct, clear thing I think we have developed to date, just explaining to a layperson what the process takes. So that's a really useful new resource. Someone just wanted to remind us that there's a NextNutrio app, and the website for that is nextnutrio.com, and that app does include, we work with them to give them an up-to-date listing of all of our verified products. So they have different nutrition information, different things people are looking for while they're shopping, but non-GMO is a big focus for them, and they call out all the non-GMO project verified products that they have in their database. We got another question about the recent boycotts and the whole Prop 37 thing. Hopefully that was adequately answered. Obviously it's a sensitive subject, and if you have more questions or want to discuss it further, let us know. But again, we believe in supporting all the positive efforts that people are making and communicating when we're concerned and we don't agree with what they're doing. Okay, I think we actually got to the last question. The last thing says thank you, so I think we're complete. So again, we'll send a follow-up email this afternoon with a copy of these slides and the links that we've mentioned. You'll also be getting your weekly e-newsletter from Chris this afternoon with a big focus on end caps and with all of those great planograms from Tree of Life and UNFI. And as you're signing off, you'll see that there's just a really short survey. We'd love your feedback. We're curious if you visited our online toolkit and if you've looked at the PDF toolkit yet. And then if you have anything else you want to tell us, there's the option to do that there. So thank you all so much for participating. And if you're going to be at Expo East in Baltimore next week, please stop by the UNFI or Tree of Life booth and say hi. And we hope you have a great non-GMO month.
A pleasure speaking with you all, and do remember, if you have any questions, you can always reach me at retailers@nongmoproject.org. Have a great day.
Thanks.